to call this meeting of the Environment and Public Works Committee to order. We welcome our guests and look forward to a productive business meeting. Today, as you know, our committee will vote on whether to move to the full Senate two outstanding nominees for offices within the Department of Commerce and the Environmental Protection Agency. Those votes will take place in just a few minutes. After that voting is concluded, we'll proceed to hold a hearing on the nomination of Michael Lee Connor to serve as Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works. May first say a few words about the two nominees whom the committee will vote on here shortly. And they are Alejandra Castillo, who has been nominated to serve as Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Economic Development, and Ms. Jane Nishida, who has been nominated to serve as the EPA Assistant Administrator for Tribal and International Affairs. They are exceptional individuals and are well prepared to serve in the positions to which they have been nominated. Both are established federal government leaders. If confirmed, they will bring decades of leadership experience to EPA and to the Economic Development Administration. We had the opportunity, as you'll recall, to hear from each of them at our hearing last month, and both of them did, I thought, an exceptional job of demonstrating why they've earned the respect and confidence not only of our president, but also from so many other former executive branch colleagues on both sides of the aisle. I'm grateful that both of them have agreed to serve our country once again, and I urge our colleagues to support their confirmations. Now I'd like to turn to Michael Connor, who's sitting right in front of us along with his daughter and his wife. I want to turn to Michael, from whom we will hear today. President Biden has nominated Mr. Connor to serve as Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works. As we all know, this is a critical leadership position for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Corps of Engineers Civil Works program is the nation's primary provider of water resources infrastructure. And with more extreme weather events and our changing climate, that work has never been more important to ensure that we're building resilient infrastructure that protects the American people whom we represent. And protecting the American people is particularly critical to those who need help the most. And they include communities of color, as well as rural, tribal, and economically disadvantaged communities across our country. As a descendant of the Taos Pueblo, Mr. Connor brings a unique perspective and has built a career advocating for Indian country and tribal water rights. He understands the importance of reaching those communities that have not benefited enough from federal investments, and he knows how to do it. Mr. Connor has the experience and character to be successful in this role. During the Obama administration, he served as Deputy Secretary of the Interior, where he managed complex natural resources challenges for the benefit of our nation. He's proven himself to be a capable leader and is more than ready to meet the robust and varied responsibilities of this position to which he's been nominated. If confirmed, Mr. Connor will lead efforts that dramatically impact every corner of this country, from coastal to inland to rural communities. All of these regions have unique water challenges, from navigation to flood control to ecosystem restorations, all of which are managed by the Army Corps. If confirmed, Mr. Connor will have to balance a wide range of complex and critical interests. To better ensure that he is successful in doing so, I recommend that he visit as many of these communities throughout our country as possible, in order to garner a broader understanding of the challenges that they face. And he must meet all those demands with limited resources. Due to the persistent underfunding in recent years, the backlog of authorized but not completed projects has grown to $109 billion. That's more than 15 times the agency's annual operating budget. That should be something of concern to all of us. The Corps shares responsibility for water infrastructure investments with state and local governments, and this shortfall is clear evidence that the federal government has not been holding up our end of the bargain for some time. With that said, there's no simple solution to this problem, as we know. And should he be confirmed, though, Mr. Connor will quickly become a key figure in endeavoring to ensure that bipartisan concerns about core funding and priorities are addressed. And I look forward to hearing his thoughts on these and other important matters. And with that, I'm happy to turn our attention to our ranking member, Senator Capito, for her opening remarks. Senator Capito, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for calling this business meeting and hearing today. First, I would like to speak briefly on the two nominations that we are voting on today. I am pleased to support the nomination of Alejandro Castilla to be Assistant Secretary for EDA at the Department of Commerce, an important position for my state. I appreciated Ms. Castilla's support for some of the key initiatives that impact my state, particularly broadband development. I'm also pleased to vote in favor of reporting the nomination of Jane Nishida to be Assistant Administrator for International and Tribal Affairs at the Environmental and Protection Agency. I appreciate the service Ms. Nishida has given over the years and her responsiveness to my questions for the record. We also gather today to consider the nomination of Michael Connor to serve as Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works. Welcome, Mr. Connor. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you earlier this week. As you agreed during our conversation, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers can and should improve its operations and more efficiently deliver important water resources projects, both in West Virginia and across our country. Tasked with overseeing the Corps' Civil Works program, the Assistant Secretary position for which you are nominated is integral to decisions pertaining to our nation's water resources and infrastructure. The Corps' activities through navigation, flood risk management, and ecosystem restoration enable economic growth, save lives, and support conservation. In 2019, approximately 2.3 short tons of waterborne commerce moved in the United States, facilitated by our nation's ports and an inland waterway systems dredged, constructed, and maintained by the Corps. It actually goes right by my house about a quarter of a mile, too. This includes everything from energy commodities to the goods Americans depend on in their lives every day. The Corps' flood risk management activities provided $348 billion in benefits to the national economy in 2019 alone. There are, in addition to other important mission areas, from hydropower to recreation and environmental infrastructure. These projects and activities are authorized and directed under the Biennial Water Resources Development Act, we call it WRDA, which is legislation developed by this committee. As I stated at our most recent meeting, I look forward to building on the bipartisan consensus that we have already achieved on water and surface transportation infrastructure legislation in this committee and moving a water bill to enactment. The cooperation of the Assistant Secretary's office will be integral to this process, as well as the ability of this committee to track implementation of prior water legislation. That being said, I am troubled by language included in support documents for the President's fiscal year 2022 budget that devalues investments in core projects that facilitate American energy independence. This will have world impacts for my state of West Virginia, and as we learned from a core stakeholder at a recent meeting, will hinder development of key infrastructure and energy projects, like offshore wind projects, critical to this administration's professed climate goals. I am also very concerned about this administration's recent decision to replace and repeal the 2020 Navigable Waters Protection Rule, as well as the lack of transparency in the decision-making process and the rationale provided by the Corps and the EPA. Underpinning the administration's decision were several assertions that have yet to be substantiated by evidence of practical environmental harm. Instead, the absence of federal jurisdiction is cited as de facto evidence of environmental harm. It also remains unclear which stakeholders were consulted prior to making this decision. I look forward to hearing Mr. Connor's views on these matters and other issues pertaining to the Corps. His years of experience, and the chairman enumerated those, both in the private sector, this body, and in leadership positions at the Department of Interior, speak to his capability and knowledge of water resource issues. The missions of the Corps and the Bureau of Reclamation do differ in certain respects, and I hope to learn more about how he will approach this important position for which he is nominated. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back my time.
Thank you so much. Now I like to call up two presidential nominations on which we'll vote en bloc. First, I call up Presidential Nomination 490, Alejandro Castillo of New York, to be Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Economic Development. And second, I want to call up Presidential Nomination 538, Jane Nishida of Maryland, to be the Assistant Administrator for International and Tribal Affairs of the Environmental Protection Agency. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You may want to turn on your microphone.
I had the opportunity to get to know both individuals, and I just want to say that they are excellent choices. I've had extensive conversation with both of them, and I'm looking forward to serving with them.
Good. Thank you very much. I know they appreciate that. I do too. Okay. Anyone else? All right. Hearing none, I move to approve and report these nominations favorably to the Senate. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The nominations are favorably reported. And the voting portion of this meeting is concluded. I just want to thank everyone for being here and allowing us to get off to a good start today. And if I would just say to our guests, if some of our colleagues get up and leave, it's not because they're not interested in what you have to say, nor the importance of your job for which you've been nominated. But we all serve on 3 or 4 or 5 committees, and they're trying to cover a lot of bases all at once. So we'll let them. Thank you. All right. Now, unless there's objection, I want to turn the page and move on to our hearing. I'd like to invite our witness, Michael Connor, to the table, please. Mr. Connor's been joined by his wife of how many years? This is their first question. And you're not under
32,
oath.
32 and counting, Mr. Chairman.
35 right here, and my wife says it's the happiest 5 years of her life. We thank your wife for joining you today. Thank you for sharing your husband with us, and I want to especially thank your daughter. You may want to introduce her as well. Go ahead. As I mentioned earlier, President Biden has nominated Mr. Connor to be the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works. If confirmed to this office, Mr. Connor's duties will include overseeing the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Among its many areas of responsibility, the Corps is responsible for responding to and reducing the likelihood of flood damage and restoring our degraded ecosystems. The Corps' Civil Works program includes the construction and operation and maintenance of our nation's ports and inland waterways, which are the gateway to both domestic and international commerce. It also includes shoreline and coastal protections for the areas of our country dramatically affected by large bodies of water. Mr. Connor comes to this nomination with years of public service experience, having served as staff to the Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources, our sister committee, and as a senior leader at the Department of the Interior. When was the secretary? That was Ken Salazar, the secretary, when you were there?
Ken Salazar was the secretary, and then Sally Jewell.
Our old colleague and friend. From 2009 to 2014, Mr. Connor led the Bureau of Reclamation as its commissioner, and from 2014 to 2017, he served as the Deputy Secretary of the Interior. Mr. Connor is now a partner at Wilmer Hale Law Firm. So, Mr. Connor, we welcome you and would invite you to please proceed with your testimony.
Thank you. Chairman Carper, Ranking Member Capito, distinguished members of the committee, I'm honored to appear before you today as President Biden's nominee to be the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works. I'm grateful and appreciative of your consideration of my nomination. Mr. Chairman, I think I missed my cue earlier, so I will take care of that now. Thank you for the opportunity to recognize my wife, Sherry, and my daughter, Gabriella.
Gabriella, I just said to Gabriella, I love that name. That's such a beautiful name.
They, along with my son, Matthew, who couldn't be here today, have made sacrifices that have allowed me the opportunity to engage in public service for many years. So I continue to deeply appreciate their support. The Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works is an important position under any circumstances, given the responsibilities of the Corps of Engineers for infrastructure, ecosystem health, maintaining waterways, managing flood risks, and protecting wetlands. These are incredibly important functions for communities across the nation. Today, these responsibilities take on new significance amid the backdrop of a pandemic-impacted economy, and that must also build resiliency in the face of climate change, while also ensuring equity amongst the communities being served. I am humbled to be nominated to work with the military leadership of the Corps and the talented civilian workforce to carry out these important responsibilities. I also believe I am well prepared to address the challenges ahead, given my extensive experience both inside and outside of government. As a former Deputy Secretary of the Interior and Commissioner of the Bureau of Reclamation, I directed strategy and managed a large federal water resources agency responsible for programs and facilities similar to those of the Corps. These positions also provided significant management experience. As the Chief Operating Officer at Interior, I was responsible for 70,000 employees and an annual budget in excess of $13 billion. At Reclamation, I managed over 5,000 employees with an annual budget in excess of $1 billion. My prior positions also provided extensive experience working directly with the Corps of Engineers. At Reclamation, we collaborated in developing climate resilience strategies, coordinating flood control and water management operations, protecting endangered species and engaging in river restoration, and advancing dam safety risk management efforts. As Deputy Secretary, I worked with the Corps in its role as a regulator, and even collaborated on an international issue involving some poorly maintained infrastructure that was impacting the United States' interests in the Middle East. And as counsel to the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee, I didn't stay in my lane, and I worked on numerous initiatives related to the Corps. I believe this experience, coupled with my background as both an engineer and a lawyer, provide a unique set of qualifications to be an effective Assistant Secretary of the Army. If confirmed, my personal background will also inform my views as I oversee the vast responsibilities associated with the Corps. I grew up in New Mexico, a state rich in natural resources, with the exception of water. I am proud of my Native American heritage and the fact that my grandfather was a leader within Taos Pueblo working to protect the tribe's water rights and its cultural resources. My childhood home in Las Cruces, New Mexico is located across the street from a major irrigation canal that was constructed with federal assistance, and it serves a large agricultural area. I grew up witnessing the important role the federal government plays in supporting and protecting the economic foundation of many communities, while also providing access to the recreational resources that enhance the quality of life for our citizens. If confirmed, I will be focused and committed to the work necessary to fulfill my responsibilities and meet the challenges facing the Corps and its stakeholders, your constituents. Of course, the Corps cannot be successful on its own. In my years in public service, have reinforced the importance of collaboration. I commit to this task with a sense of humility and a keen understanding of the need to work with state and local leaders, the public, affected stakeholders, and members of Congress to most effectively carry out the Corps' mission. I am equally committed to increasing coordination within the federal government, a whole-of-government approach that is more effective and efficient in addressing the effects of a changing landscape across the country. Finally, with your support, I will be proud to join a department led by Secretary Austin, Deputy Secretary Hicks, and Secretary Wormuth, who have made clear their intent to lead with transparency, integrity, and the highest ethical standards in carrying out the Defense Department's and the Army's vital missions. I am equally committed to these principles. Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee, and I look forward to your questions.
Again, welcome. I want to begin the questioning of our witness today by noting that Senator Capito and I have agreed to move to 5-minute rounds of questions with additional rounds at the discretion of the chair with her concurrence. To begin, this committee has three. Ms. Gunn, the committee, as you may know, has three standing yes or no questions that we ask of all nominees who appear before us. And so I want to ask those questions of you now. And if you screw these up, then we'll just call it an early morning. So, but I don't think you will. I don't think you will. First question, do you agree, if confirmed, to appear before this committee or designated members of this committee and other appropriate committees of the Congress and provide information subject to appropriate and necessary security protections with respect to your responsibilities? Do you agree?
Yes.
So far, so good. Second question, do you agree to ensure that testimony, briefings, documents, and electronic and other forms of communication of information are provided to this committee and its staff and other appropriate committees in a timely manner? Do you agree?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Do you know of any matters which you may or may not have disclosed that might place you in a conflict of interest if you are confirmed? Do you?
No.
Good. Okay. My first question would be, dealing a little bit with your experience with the Department of Interior. Your experience with the Department of Interior, including the Bureau of Reclamation, was largely focused on issues that affect the Western U.S., including energy, conservation, and climate change. My question is this: please tell us about your experience with coastal programs and what would be your approach in prioritizing water infrastructure projects to address coastal needs, as well as the rural and inland needs of our country.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly have experience dealing with coastal issues as it related to reclamation's programs and water resources issues. That is probably one of the biggest differences, though, between reclamation's mission and the Corps of Engineers' mission is the amount of coastal work. So most of my experience in the coastal arena has to do with work I did as Deputy Secretary related to our facilities, national parks, other initiatives related to coastal issues, dealing with erosion, coastal surge issues, and my work as a member of the Restore Council in the aftermath of Deepwater Horizon, and looking at the number of projects and the funding that was available to do just that, restore areas of the coast, which was protecting our coastal facilities, building up wetlands, addressing coastal surge issues, making the investments necessary to fortify our coast in the face of the issues associated with climate change, long-term resilience, as well as the restoration efforts out in the Gulf of Mexico that were necessary. So I feel I have a general and a fairly good understanding and some good history in dealing with those coastal issues, recognizing that the Corps' mission in particular is founded in great part on those ports and those waterways, and now coastal protection issues in the face of a changing climate and the resiliency needed as we protect beaches, as we look at erosion issues, as we try and once again deal with and adapt to the changes that are occurring in our environment.
Well, I'm told that you're a quick study, and we are counting on that to be the case, especially as you come up to speed on the coastal issues, which a number of us looking to my left, and even over here, my far left, where the Great Lakes, there's a lot of interest in both sides on these issues. Thank you. Second question was recently there's been a lot of discussion regarding the method used to calculate the benefit to cost ratio. We talked a little bit about this when we were on either together on the phone, but a lot of discussion regarding the method used to calculate the benefit to cost ratio and the omission of benefits that are hard to quantify. For example, the benefit to cost ratio does not account for savings associated with not having to provide emergency response when a proposed project functions as intended. The benefit to cost ratio also fails to really capture long-term environmental benefits and tertiary economic benefits. Here's my question. What other factors should be considered in identifying project benefits in order for initiatives to move forward? And how should the Corps better prioritize projects to reflect all of the benefits?
Thank you, Senator. That's a question that folks have been wrestling with for quite a while now, how to assess the full range of benefits associated with any projects. We understand the costs with most projects, not that we always estimate them accurately up front. But with respect to evaluating the benefits, I think it's important to keep in front of us the economic returns that we expect. But there are, particularly in multifaceted projects, and all of our projects should be looking at multiple purposes these days. There are ecosystems benefits. There are communities of need and protection of those communities that in valuing the land associated with the protections that are going to be in place with this specific project, it's not equitable to consider just the pure value ascribed through some appraisal process that doesn't recognize the need. So I think all of these factors need to be assessed. We need to better understand, and really, there is huge economic value to ecosystem services that I don't think we can have properly valued to date. And then there is the local regional benefits associated with communities of need that need to be integrated into that benefit cost formula. I see, based on the direction where this administration is going, based on the direction Congress has clearly gone in the last Water Resources Development Act, that there is direction for the Corps to better account for the value of those benefits. I am fully supportive of those efforts and working on that if I'm confirmed.
All right. Thanks so much. Senator Capito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Connor, and thank you for your willingness to serve. Certainly appreciate that. My first question was going to be very similar to what the chairman asked, in that your prior experience has been at the Bureau of Reclamation. Wondering, there's certain areas, obviously, of the Corps, navigation and flight risk management, that are areas of core responsibility that you didn't really actually deal with over at Reclamation. I didn't know if you wanted to address that issue more deeply, how you're going to, get up to speed on that. I mean, obviously, you've already done a lot of research in that area.
Sure, Senator. Thank you. There was an overlap. Certainly, the Bureau of Reclamation's mission with respect to water supply in particular is fairly unique, although the Corps does have water supply responsibilities, and I talked to Senator Kramer about that. But also, there is lots of overlap, and I do think where that experience will pay off, particularly in flood risk management. Part of the fundamental mission of the Bureau of Reclamation was also flood control. Worked very closely in the Central Valley of California with respect to Folsom Dam on a coordinated flood management program, fortification of that dam and its spillway with the Corps, jointly managing a construction project. And the river restoration, the aquatic ecosystem restoration program that the Corps has. In partnership, we did work with the Corps at the Bureau of Reclamation, and on its own, Reclamation also had similar significant river restoration opportunities. So I think there is a lot of parallels, experience that will directly apply. As I mentioned, there are areas where I need to get up to speed. I'll just mention one of the hydropower, obviously, was very, very similar in the approach that we had to take to manage that resource, deal with changes, effects of a fluctuating water supply these days, and that will be similar with the Corps.
Right. That's going to be critical. Now, on the flood risk management, we had a terrible flood in 2016. I might have mentioned this on the phone with you, that took 23 lives and destroyed more than 1,000 homes in West Virginia. And the Corps has been very active to try to help us prevent such things as happen. I did put initial funding into the Kanawha River Basin feasibility study to determine what additional projects might be needed to improve this flood risk management. So I'm going to ask you today, will you continue to work with me on that to initiate this study?
Absolutely.
Thank you. We did talk on the phone about the length of time it takes for certain permitting. By the time you get all the different agencies and different coordinations between state and local, I guess, and federal. I guess my question is not so much the length of time, but in your experience, do you think that that states are capable of protecting environmental resources such as water resources within their own borders? How do you see that interplay of cooperative federalism playing out?
I think the easiest answer is yes, states are fully capable of protecting their water resources. At the same time, we obviously have a system where there are state laws that apply, there are state responsibilities under federal law, and there are federal responsibilities. So we have to improve that cooperative federalism. It is absolutely critical. I am a very strong proponent of making our permitting processes as efficient as possible. Given the challenges that we face, we need to make decisions. We need to work collaboratively with state and local communities, and we need to sync up, particularly amongst federal agencies. I was a member of the FAST 41 task force that worked on permitting efficiencies. We need to keep the thoroughness of the reviews, but there is lost time in the lack of coordination. We need to improve upon that at the federal level, and then take that to the next step, work in partnership with the states.
I certainly agree with that. I mean, when you look at the different agencies that weigh in on whatever project it might be, Fish and Wildlife, EPA, the Corps, by the time you go through the permitting process of all that, you're into years, and years not only don't solve the problem, but they also cost a lot of money at the same time. And a lot of people walk away from projects at certain periods of time because they just obviously can't afford to stay in the process. So however we can help you with that, we'd certainly like to see the thoroughness there, but also the timeliness at the same time. My last question for right now is on the WOTUS rule. I mentioned it in my opening statement. I know you're not at the Corps yet, but the rationale for taking the WOTUS regulations, we obviously saw it in court all over the country with sort of mixed results in terms of who's acting under it, who isn't. A lot of confusion for a lot of different range of whether it's personal, golf courses, agriculture, whatever it might be. So, what challenges do you think the Corps will face, including related to obtaining permits for Corps projects, if a new WOTUS definition is finalized that is more expansive than the 2015 rule?
Well, the rule, Senator, the rule has changed so many times over the years that I'm not sure the challenges are going to be any different. We need to have a clear definition of waters of the U.S., one that is protective as it should be under the Clean Water Act, but one that provides clarity. And I think, the goal, from what I understand, in embarking upon a new rule is to work very closely with the affected parties under that rule. And so my goal would be to have a clear rule that has enough level of input that hopefully we can get out of this litigation cycle, and that we can move on with a rule that's going to be in place for a number of years. That should be the goal. That will do the most, I think, to help the Corps in its permitting ability and its responsibilities for making jurisdictional determinations if we have some clarity and we have some longevity to the next rule. And that's going to require some collaboration, working with stakeholders, and I believe that's the game plan.
Thank you. Well, we'll be watching that and appreciate your input on that. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Senator Capito. Now I want to turn to Senator Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chairman. Welcome, Mr. Connor.
Thank
Good
you.
to have you with us, and I appreciate very much the dedication and the skill that you've shown in your service. And you and I don't have any problems, but I have a big problem with the organization that you're going to come into. And I apologize for loading this onto you, but did you ever see the movie Groundhog Day?
Yes, sir.
So every morning, Bill Murray wakes up, and it's the same damn morning over and over and over again. So I've been on the Army Corps on this issue for years, back through the Obama administration, through the Trump administration, and we get some happy talk from people when they're at the table here, and then after that, complete blow-off, complete disinterest. And the two issues that concern me, one is quite a simple one, and that is getting answers and getting congressional mandates paid attention to. The Army Corps seems to believe that when we pass a law that instructs the Army Corps to do something, that is an optional, faint suggestion, maybe to be listened to if it's convenient and consistent with other internal bureaucratic goals of the Army Corps. I think that's got to stop. And Mr. Chairman, I think we've got to work out some kind of an operating protocol between this committee and the Army Corps so that the things that we instruct as elected representatives the Army Corps to do actually get done. So that's point A. Point B, as a coastal state senator, all right, our chairman, I'll just go down my side. Our chairman is a coastal state senator. Senator Cardin is a coastal state senator. I'm a coastal state senator. Senator Merkley's a coastal state senator. Senator Markey's a coastal state senator. Senator Padilla's a coastal state senator. And if you throw in the Great Lakes, you pick up Senator Stabenow and you pick up Senator Duckworth. So I have been hollering at the Army Corps for years about your flood and coastal damage reduction fund. Flood and coastal damage reduction fund. Do you know how much of the flood and coastal damage reduction fund actually goes to coastal?
A very small amount, from my understanding.
Very small amount. In a bad year, it's $120 for inland for every $1 for coastal. So less than 1% in a bad year. We're operating right now under a proposal where it would be 45-1. So, help me with the math here. 45-1 on a percentage basis, I think that translates to about 97+% to inland and 2% and some change to coastal. In your answer to Senator Carper, you talked about your awareness of all these coastal issues that we're facing. We're looking at 9 feet of sea level rise in Rhode Island by the end of the century. We're looking at having to redraw the maps of my state because of sea level rise. We're looking at dramatic changes in the fisheries, dramatic changes in storm risk. Our coasts are in dire distress. And the Army Corps blunders on, just completely obtuse to that risk. Year after year after year, treating coastal, it's not even a stepchild. It's like you can root in the garbage and see if you can find something, but we're going to feed everything, all of our interest goes to inland. And I got to tell you, Mr. Connor, this is too many Groundhog Days. And I'm sorry that this is you at this moment, but I need some resolution of this with your organization. I cannot go forward with this enormous fund that is so important to coastal health, the Flood and Coastal Damage Reduction Fund, getting 1 or 2% of its funding for all of America's coasts, our Pacific coasts, our Gulf coasts, our mid-Atlantic coasts, all of Florida, our northeastern coasts. All of them share 1 to 2% of this fund, while inland soaks up 97%, 98%. Is that not indefensible in this day and age, knowing the risks that our coasts face?
Well, Senator, I hear your concern. I've read your letter. It sounds like, the step one is the answers as to why. Why is the funding allocated in the way it is?
I actually don't care very much about why. I want finito. I want it stopped.
And
I want some balance. If why helps us get to balance, then I'd be interested in why. But I don't want a lot of why that gives us year after year after year after year of coasts getting essentially frozen out of the Coastal Damage Reduction Fund. I think that's a reasonable request. I'm sorry that this is my umpteenth Groundhog Day and that you happen to be here on this particular Groundhog morning. But I'm done with putting up with this, and I'm done with the non-responsiveness of the Army Corps to this flagrant misallocation of resources.
Senator, I will understand the why so that I can get to you to the how, which is how we make those changes that you're requesting. And I'm fully committed to the idea resiliency cuts across every program of the Corps of Engineers, and we've got to address it on all levels and all threats, as you've mentioned.
Thank you. And I know the chairman shares my concern because his state actually has shallower coasts than mine, and the same sea level rise that's going to raise 9 feet on my shores and do immense damage to my state is going to be even worse for Delaware, which not only is Chairman Carper's state, but there's also somebody you report to who comes from that state.
And it's not
Let's
Chris
get this
Coons.
done.
Could be someday. Senator Whitehouse, Delaware is the lowest lying state in America. The highest point of land in Delaware is a bridge. And so we have grave concerns about these issues. And maybe the best thing we can do is, once you had a chance to settle in, confirmed, settle in your new job, just to have an oversight hearing and come back and drill down on this a bit more, and along with some other subjects too.
One with answers would be great. Thanks.
There you go. There you go. And now, Senator Inhofe, thank you. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, let me talk a little bit to Sherry and Gabby. Don't worry about things today. This guy received a 100% vote in confirmation in the past. Not many people can say that. All right. And it's one that we've worked with very close together. There are three issues. Actually, two of them are going to be asking for commitments, which I think should come, but I just want to make sure that it's on record. But the first one has to do with the WOTUS rule. Senator Capito had some concerns. I share those concerns. I was very disappointed but not surprised that the EPA and the Army Corps have decided to repeal and replace the Trump-era Navigation Waters Protection Rule. But This isn't that's not the end of it. We know what happens when we change administrations. We know that the likelihood is going to happen again. The Obama era WOTUS rule, which was the number one regulatory concern of my farm. We're a farm state in Oklahoma, and their number one concern. Essentially, what the WOTUS rule did was take away from the states and give to the federal government that jurisdiction. My people in Oklahoma, my farmers in Oklahoma, didn't think that was a good idea, and so that's still something that will be taking place. We're not sure how it's going to end up, and if so, it won't be a lasting end, in my opinion. Now, in June, the EPA released a statement saying the EPA and the Army Corps determined the Trump era rule is leading to significant environmental degradation. Significant environmental degradation. Now, I know you're not currently at the Corps. Are you aware of any specific and significant degradation, environmental degradation, that would be tied to the Trump rule?
Senator, I'm not aware of any specific circumstances right now.
Yeah, and I'm not either. And if you feel one coming on, will you let me know? Then, secondly, we have a levee system in my home city of Tulsa. It's built in the 1940s. It's survived. It had a real close call 2 years ago, and I think you probably are familiar with that. It did get attention all over the nation, and we are concerned about that. It was the word at 2020 authorized this project, and this was built in the 1940s. It's got to be modernized to fully protect the $2.2 billion in homes and businesses along the Arkansas River, including 2 refineries. And I showed you and your staffs of these refineries. This was authorized, the word of bill in 2020. We're all familiar with that. It had joint jurisdiction between 2 committees. It authorized this project, and I submitted a congressional direct spending request to expedite design work so this project remains on the fast track. My first ask of you is, will you commit to ensuring this project remains a priority for the Corps?
Yes, Senator, you have my commitment. My understanding is that got a significant amount of resources in the FY 2022 budget.
Yeah.
And so I would like to continue the efforts working with you.
Good. And I appreciate that, and I anticipated that would be the case. The last thing I want to mention is the MCARNs. It's recently the Assistant Secretary of the Army Civil Works recently made the decision that the MCARN's 12-foot deepening project does not require new investment decision for the purpose of dedicating funds for construction. Now, that was a major thing. It was a very meaningful thing to Senator Bozeman, to myself, and to a number of others. But deepening the MCARNs to the 12-foot, keeping in mind that the entire channel would be 9 foot, but now changing it to in a very small amount, we'll change it to a 12-foot channel. That'll increase the load, the capacity by some 40%. It's a huge thing there, and deepening that is now pretty accepted to everyone. And I just want to make sure that you don't have any plans or any knowledge of anything that would come along and change that at this time. So I'd ask if you'd commit to following this decision. This is the decision that it does not require a new investment decision for the purpose of dedicating funds for construction. So will you commit to following this decision?
I am committed to following the decision. I'm not aware of anything that would change that
All right,
approach.
That's fine. I look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Senator.
You bet.
Senator Stappano is next. She'll be followed by Senator Creamer and Senator Bozeman. Senator Stappano.
Well, thank you,
Glad
Mr. Chairman. I want to follow up supporting comments of Senator Whitehouse's, but I do want to make one correction. Actually, the Great Lakes have more shoreline than the East Coast and West Coast combined, we have 4,530 miles. 3,458 miles on the east and west coast. So we refer to ourselves as the ocean without the salt. And and what you do is incredibly important and impactful. The Army Corps of Engineers is, particularly right now, University of Michigan has put out a study saying that the Great Lakes are warming faster than the coast, and I understand the incredible urgency on the coast, but we are feeling it. I could go on and on about what is happening right now. But I want to talk specifically about two important Army Corps projects that we really need to have even more of a sense of urgency on. One relates to our one of our biggest threats on invasive species, which is Asian carp, a great big fish. I never thought fish would keep me up at night. This big fish that has no functioning stomach gets to 100 pounds and just in the water kind of destroys everything else when it gets into the Great Lakes. It's very close to the Great Lakes. We have been operating for a number of years, working with Illinois and the Army Corps to stop these fish coming up the Mississippi River through a project that's been identified and is in the works, but needs to move faster, called the Brandon Road Lock and Dam. Senator Portman and I have led a bipartisan effort now for years to identify and create the technology that would be able to stop the fish, but allow the barges to continue to move up the rivers into Chicago. So I appreciate the expertise of the Army Corps, but we have to have an incredible sense of urgency about the fish aren't waiting for us. They don't wait for an appropriation cycle. And the economic damage, as you were talking about, sort of how we put all this together and so on, the economic damage of these fish destroying billions of dollars, $7 billion fishing industry in the Great Lakes and $16 billion boating industry is very serious. So that's one. The other that is in process, but also I'm concerned about how fast it's moving, is something called the SULOCs, which allows major ships to come down the St. Lawrence Seaway from the oceans into the Great Lakes. And we built in World War II. They actually did it pretty fast in World War II. We're able to start to finish, do it in a couple of years. We're now looking at, it's been 20 years just to get to a point we're now funding the engineering of it in another 10. But we have one lock that will allow the big barges to get in the Great Lakes. This is all of our raw materials for manufacturing, for agriculture. If something happens to that lock, you shut down a major part of the economy, actually, for the country. And so as the head of the Corps, can I count on you to work with us and to support in every way we can expediting these two projects that are critical for the economy of the Great Lakes?
Senator Stabenow, you absolutely have my commitment on that front. With respect to the Asian carp, I've seen that and been watching the situation unfold for many, many years now. This, to me, not only the urgency of the situation, the work the Corps needs to do, but the whole of government approach. I know USGS has done a lot of the scientific work in support of this effort. It's an area where we need to bring folks together. And with respect to the lock system, we've seen just in Suez most recently what a few days means to international commerce. So we need to take care of this infrastructure.
Thank you. And you're exactly right. What happened in the Suez Canal could happen in our country through the St. Lawrence Seaway and the SULOCs. We're holding our breath at this point in time. It doesn't happen. Let me just ask one other question in conclusion. Resiliency. The Great Lakes Basin, as our other coasts, very concerned. We're seeing high water levels and literally shoreline falling in the water, houses falling in the water because of erosion, damage to agriculture, all kinds of serious issues. But we have for a number of years now, again, a bipartisan initiative to have the Army Corps do a Great Lakes resiliency study. We've had it in the budget. We passed it, the authorization for it a number of years ago. Never been funded. It is now in President Biden's budget. It is critical that this move as quickly as possible to assist our Great Lakes coast in being able to deal with what we need to do on infrastructure resiliency. And so I would ask for your support and any comments on that.
Yes, absolutely my support, obviously because it's in the president's budget, but because given the urgency of the situation, there's obviously the impacts of climate on water out west, which I'm very familiar with, but I've become more familiar with later. I'm not sure there's any bodies of water more impacted than the Great Lakes with the fluctuations that are happening now and the storm surges at high levels. So that resilience study, I view that consistent with your views, incredibly important to move forward expeditiously.
Thank you. I look forward to working with you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Samper, thanks for joining us. I think Senator Kramer is next, then followed by Senator Carton, and then Senator Bozeman. Senator Kramer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Connor. Good to see you yesterday in the Armed Services Committee. Today, you don't have all those other military guys around you. You're on your own, but you're doing just fine. And Sherry and Gabriella, welcome and congratulations. I enjoyed very much our conversation on the phone. It was hard not to nerd out a little bit on a couple of these things. Sometimes I think there are only a couple of us that know what we're talking about, and then I find out, no, there's just one, and it's not me. But I enjoyed it. I want to start by asking a fundamental policy question and really sort of drilling down on some of the things that you visited with Senator Senator Moore Capito on, and that is, of course, states' rights. You and I talked about it, and it's an area I think for a lot of us that we in many cases, particularly out in the middle of the country, maybe feel a little bit isolated from things, and sometimes not just forgotten, but maybe getting too much attention from time to time. And I know it's an issue that you dealt with, you grappled with, obviously, when you were the Commissioner for Reclamation. It was important. In there are two of the most fundamental statutes that govern the Corps: the Flood Control Act of 1944, and then, of course, the Water Supply Act of 1958, which expressly reinforce states' rights and reinforce the historic policy of deferring to state water rights. The Flood Control Act's declaration of policy specifically states, I'm going to quote here, "It is hereby declared to be the policy of the Congress to recognize the interests and rights of the states in determining the development of the watersheds within their borders, and likewise their interests and rights in water utilization and control," unquote. Similarly, the Water Supply Act reinforces, quote, "It is declared to be the policy of the Congress to recognize the primary responsibilities of the states and local interests in developing water supplies for domestic, municipal, industrial, and other purposes," unquote. So at the end of the Obama administration, you and I talked about this, the Corps proposed what became known as the Water Supply Rule, which both Republican and Democratic Western states adamantly opposed. I mean unanimously opposed. And it's not very often that Oregon and North Dakota are on the exact same page, or where the attorneys general of those two states and the governors of those two states will sign on paper their opposition to something. And so when it comes, though, to messing with states' water rights, we in the West get pretty serious and pretty united. So thankfully, the rule was formally withdrawn under the Trump administration after this bipartisan blowback. And with that in mind, I want to ask, do you believe that the Corps was right to withdraw the rule? And if so, can you commit that it will not be proposed again, at least under your leadership?
Well, Senator, thank you. And I greatly enjoyed our conversation. And at the risk of being even wonkier, I'll say the acts you just referenced are the same as Section 8 of the Reclamation Act. And so I'm used to working under that regime. I am not familiar with the specifics of the regulation that was proposed. I am very sensitive, though, to the concerns that you just raised. And given the opposition, there can't be progress moving forward with something that's been rejected previously. And so you have my commitment to look into that issue, make sure that we work on something productive together. I think coming up with something, as I understand in our conversation, that is close to getting support necessary so that water resources can be allocated from those core facilities is incredibly important. We see it in the West-wide drought. It's no longer a regional drought. It's a West-wide drought. And we need to, getting back to my overall objective, is to ensuring that these facilities have the maximum multiple beneficial purposes. I'm happy to work with you on your approach.
Thank you, and I appreciated your, you're elaborating a little bit on collective or on cooperative federalism with Senator Moore Capito. It was it was refreshing to hear. So I won't dig into that. But I'm going to go quickly to the Dakota Access Pipeline, which, as you know, originates in North Dakota, runs 358 miles through North Dakota. 0.21 miles of the 358 miles are being contested. As you know, you of course were the deputy secretary at the time of the protests and that was built. I won't relitigate the whole thing. You know it very well. A lot of people know it very well. But at the issue at hand now, of course, while the pipeline continues to function safely, move about a little over 500,000 barrels of oil per day. 60% of the oil from the Mandan-Hadassah-Arikara Nation flows on that pipeline. As you know, a judge here in D.C. ordered the EA to be replaced with an EIS. And that's, of course, where the challenges come for whether to shut the pipeline down while the EIS is done. It's not going to be shut down, as you know. It's legally sustainable now. My question, though, is if you're confirmed with this EIS continuing, and it's expected to be done in March of next year, and that will determine a couple of things. One, whether the pipeline was sited properly, mostly sited by the state of North Dakota, other than this 0.21 miles under the Missouri River. But do I have your commitment that you'll do everything you can to keep politics out of the EIS process? Because I firmly believe the EIS will confirm the EA, which was done by the Obama administration. So,
Senator Kramer, yes, we need to move forward consistent with law and the very clear direction that the court has given to move forward with an EIS, to do a thorough analysis addressing the deficiencies that the court found. Those are legal questions and they're technical questions that need to be followed up. That the district office is moving forward on a very firm schedule for completing that, I think, in the spring of next year. I want to oversee that and understand it, given the visibility of the issue and the importance of tribal consultation in moving forward. And so that's going to be the process. It's not going to be a political one.
DA, thank you. And by the way, you might have noticed just this week or late last week, the first consultation with the tribe took place for the EIS. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you,
Senator Cardin, thanks for rejoining us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Connor, I enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for your willingness to take on this important responsibility, and thank you to your family for sharing in the public service. I want to start with one I think is one of the core functions of the Corps, and that is to keep our shipping channels safe and navigable. When I first started in politics, the location of dredge material was an extremely difficult subject. Careers were won and lost by location of dredge materials. That's no longer the case, at least for the shipping channel into the Baltimore Harbor. We've been able to find locations that have used the dredge material for beneficial use. We've gone over Poplar Island, which was a restored island, environmental success. The communities that are closest to it cheered the restoration of this island. The wildlife there is now fantastic. We have our second location in Mid-Bay. That's a priority for the Maryland Congressional Delegation. And we will be seeking construction money in this budget cycle with the support of the Army Corps. I mention that because you and I had a positive conversation, and I just really want to get your input as to helping us move forward with projects such as Mid-Bay that will allow us to have a site for the dredge materials to keep our channels open and safe, but also restore the environmental community, which helps us with the Chesapeake Bay and our environment.
Senator Cardin, thank you. I very much enjoyed our conversation, particularly about this set of projects with the beneficial use of dredge material. I'm going to express huge enthusiasm for the approach that you've taken with Poplar Island and the other projects that are planned. I want to pause and say, given my enthusiasm, I'm quite aware of the backlog in the Corps' budget for authorized projects and the need for funding. And I'm certainly hopeful that through the jobs package and the other work going on, that there'll be additional resources, because getting to the point That project is fantastic. That concept is fantastic. The idea that we're going to enhance long-term commerce through the effective dredging program, through the Port of Baltimore and other ports, and then use that material to build resiliency and to restore and address problems with, the vigorous action, the surges of the erosion taking place because of climate change is just a win-win-win all around. And we need to do more of that. So you've got my strong commitment that we will look forward to those opportunities and developing those win-win-wins.
Well, thank you. That's exactly what the leadership will need. We talked also about Blackwater, where we use dredge materials to restore wetlands, which was worked much more effectively than I think our engineers originally thought they expected, with success in a relatively short period of time. There's a cost issue, but when you weigh the environmental benefits, it really is the right investment and deals with resiliency and protection against erosion. Let me go on to an issue that the chairman mentioned in his original questioning, and that is the economic analysis on doing projects. Commercial activity tied to small channels do not necessarily rise to the same level of funding priority among the Army Corps because of the way the analysis is done. But these small channels, and we have huge backlogs in dealing with this, are incredibly important to local communities in dealing with their way of life and dealing with the safety of their activities, recreational issues, et cetera, that again don't rise to the same level on your analysis. We know there's a funding issue, and we're going to do everything we can to give you the resources you need to make significant progress on the backlog. I would just like to get your help in working with the local communities so that they have a realistic expectation as to when their projects can be funded and how we can best line them up for participation with the Army Corps.
Yes, Senator, you have my commitment on that front. I think we have focused on national benefits for quite a long time, whether it's the Bureau of Reclamation, whether it's the Corps of Engineers, and we've seen inequities as a result of that focus. And so now is the time, and I think, once again, this is an area that Congress has given pretty good direction in the last Water Resources Development Act through authorization of pilot projects for economically disadvantaged communities, through direction on relooking at the benefit cost determinations and taking into local and regional benefits a lot more. So you have my commitment. That's one of the challenges now, is to expand the protections and the work that the Corps does for the benefit of those economically disadvantaged communities that have been left behind.
Yeah, I would just point out, Mr. Chairman, in closing, and that is the livelihoods, the tourism, the recreational use in small communities are very much impacted by the work done by the Army Corps. So I just think, as we always look at the major projects, and I'm strongly in support of those, we shouldn't ignore the underserved smaller communities. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Cardin. Senator Bozeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. And thank you for being with us, Mr. Connor, and we do appreciate your willingness to serve in such an important position. I want to talk to you about a couple of projects that are really important to Arkansas in an effort to use our water resources as best we can. And we're blessed with good water resources for the most part, but we've got two projects going on, the Grand Prairie Irrigation Project and also the Biomeda project. And what they do is they take surface water and use the surface water versus using our aquifers. We've got two huge aquifers, the alluvial and the Sparta, and they cover that entire region of the country, spreading up into Tennessee. They're the water supply for Memphis, areas like that, besides, hundreds of thousands of acres for agriculture. And what they do is divert water from the White River and the Arkansas River that have an excess of surface water, divert that and use that as the irrigation water versus taking from the aquifers. We've spent hundreds of millions of dollars on these projects. The Corps has been very supportive through the years, but in the last several years, things have languished. We're very close to completion. And really what I'd like for you to is really simple. Just get a commitment for you to come out in the not too distant future, look at the projects, give us some advice as to how we can move things forward, visit with us, visit with the stakeholders. The Corps likes the projects. Again, it's just a matter of us kind of rolling up our sleeves and figuring out exactly how we can, just put the last touches on so that we can go forward and get them completed.
Senator, I'd be happy to come out. This, conjunctive use of surface groundwater and trying to find the right match to provide firm supplies, but also, protect the environment surrounding the area is incredibly interesting to me. I'm happy. It sounds like a project that's well on its way. I'd be happy to be
Great
out there.
projects, and again, protecting water, less energy use, the whole bit. So, and then again, our groundwater, so very important.
Yes.
Trying to get those things recharged. I want to second what Senator Inhofe said regarding the Arkansas River and the 9 to 12 foot channel. Arkansas and Oklahoma are joined at the hip in those projects, and for all of the reasons that you said, when you can increase a barge by 40%, what does that do as far as saving energy, efficiencies, things like that? So it's really important, lowering cost. The other thing I'd like to talk to you about, and I know you're getting bombarded with this, but it's so important. I'm ranking on agriculture, and WOTUS has been a huge burden to my state in the past with the agriculture community. For years, it created so much uncertainty, it was difficult for farmers to plan. Farm Bureau, a grassroots organization, went through a Herculean effort to ensure farmers and ranchers' voices were heard during the Obama administration. If confirmed, will you work with our cities, agriculture, state governments, and stakeholders to create a rule that won't get held up for years in the courts and not creating this uncertainty that we've seen in the past with our farm community and so many other areas?
Senator, if confirmed, you have my commitment to doing that. Durability and longevity of a new rule will be a very high priority.
Very much. And a huge challenge.
Yes, we
But I hope we can work together, to thread that needle, which is so very important for so many different reasons. Again, I just want to, I agree with Senator Whitehouse and his concern for the outer banks, but also, there is a lot of resources going into the inland waterways. When you count up all the streams and lakes and rivers and all that, it's, a humongous amount of shoreline. So we've got all kinds of problems regarding erosion there. What you get into, the way I see it is, there's lots of don't do this, don't do that with our streams. There's lots of management from the state and the federal government. That's not a bad thing, okay, in the sense of, if it's done in the right way. The problem is there's no one that is really managing the, taking care of them in the sense of, providing the resources that we need to prevent the erosion, things like that. So that's something else that we'd like to work with you on.
Yes, absolutely.
Very good.
Those are important issues.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Bozeman. Great to see you. And we have joining us via WebEx is Senator Duckworth, and we've also been joined in person by Senator Padilla. Welcome, and bienvenido. And glad you could be here. And if no one else shows up, either in person or remotely, you'll be the last.
Thank you.
Questioner, unless Senator might come up with some questions, we might do that. All right, Senator Duckworth, are you there?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for holding today's hearing. Thank you, Mr. Connor, for your participation today. In an increasingly competitive global marketplace, our inland waterways are absolutely critical to the economic well-being of Illinois farmers as well as other Midwest industries. Waterways are so important to our competitiveness that a handful of years ago, industry stakeholders banded together to secure from Congress a tax increase. Can you imagine? They asked for a tax increase on their own operations in support of investments to keep our locks and dams in good repair. That's something you just don't see every day. The Corps of Engineers recently updated its capital investment strategy that prioritizes lock construction projects with industry stakeholders based on their importance and benefit to the nation. And in fact, in its 2020 report, the Corps and the Inland Waterways User Board ranked Lock and Dam 25 and LaGrange Lock and Dam on the Mississippi River as part of the Navigation and Ecosystem Sustainability Program, known as NEST, as a Tier Alpha project, meaning they are among the Corps' top priorities for construction. Mr. Connor, these projects are critical and must get underway as soon as possible. Will you commit to working with me to ensure that these projects receiving a new start?
Yes, Senator, you have my commitment, understanding the importance and the work that's been done recently on inland waterways, the trust fund, and the plans under that. I'm happy to make the commitment to continue to work with you in that effort.
Thank you. As to urban flooding, WRDA 2018 directed the Corps to furnish a report to Congress on the Corps' ability to address urban flooding, an issue of increasing importance given global climate change and sea level rise. This report was due to Congress not later than 1 year after enactment. But 2.5 years later, I still do not have my report. If confirmed, will you commit to updating me on this effort within your first month as Assistant Secretary?
Yes, Senator, if I'm confirmed, I commit to updating you on that report.
Thank you. Given your previous work on Western water issues, you no doubt can appreciate a bureaucratic pickle when you see one. Unfortunately, and I love pickles, but not this kind. Unfortunately, I have another one for you. The Chicago District's Bubbly Creek project on the south branch of the Chicago River. At question is whether or not the Corps can secure the liability protections needed to advance a cleanup of this contaminated area. In the interest of time, I won't delve into the specifics of this case, but the two federal agencies with a role in this matter, the Corps of Engineers and the US EPA, clearly do not see eye to eye on the problem and therefore have not identified a workable solution. One agency believes this is a policy issue. The other agency believes this is a statutory issue. Will you commit to picking up the phone in the first 2 weeks following your confirmation and calling EPA Administrator Regan to address this impasse?
Yes, Senator, you have my commitment if I'm confirmed to move forward with that. Removing bureaucratic hurdles to make progress is something I share a strong concern and appreciation for.
Thank you. And that's the aim, is to remove the hurdle. I don't want to have any finger pointing. I just want to find a solution to this. And very quickly, I have just a little over a minute, just under 2 minutes left. Mr. Connor, I just have a series of rapid fire questions. If confirmed, will you commit to reinforcing the importance of the Inland Waterways User Board with Secretary Austin and help to expedite his review so the board can be reactivated as quickly as possible?
Yes, I will work with you on that, yes.
Thank you. And WRDA 2020 includes several provisions reinforcing the Corps' support for Chicago's shorelines. If confirmed, will you commit to updating me on these efforts within the first month on the job?
Yes, I will, Senator.
Thank you. Section 133 of WRDA 2020 authorizes the Corps to repair and rehabilitate federal pump stations that are in disrepair. If you are confirmed, I would like a list of pump stations on the upper Mississippi River that the Corps plans to prioritize. Will you commit to providing me with this list within a month of your confirmation?
Senator, yes. Senator. If confirmed, I'll provide you with that list.
Thank you. And finally, will you commit to visiting Illinois soon and touring some of our critical infrastructure projects?
I'm sorry, I missed the commitment.
Will you commit to coming out to Illinois and touring some of our infrastructure projects? I promise to get you some sweet corn while you're out.
Yes, Senator, I commit to doing that.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I look forward to speaking with you again tomorrow. Mr. Chairman, thank you so much. I yield back.
That sweet corn extend to the rest of us, Senator. We'll find it.
It's a deal, Mr. Chairman. You gave me extra time.
Okay, we've been joined by Senator Padilla and Senator Markey, and in that order. And Senator Padilla, you're recognized. Then Eddie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Connor, good morning.
Good morning.
I want to start by saying how grateful I am that someone with your experience with water and drought issues in California specifically is being nominated for this position. As I mentioned to you by phone yesterday, your reputation precedes you. And I want to point out what an accomplishment it is to be so widely respected in California water world across a variety of stakeholders. So if that's an indicator for how you'll do in this position, we have a high expectation. The Army Corps has been a great partner, not just to the state of California as a whole, but specifically to my hometown of Los Angeles, since devastating flood events in the 1930s prompted the federal government to assist Los Angeles County specifically in developing and expanding flood control infrastructure. The Sepulveda Dam, for example, along with Hanson Dam and the Lopez Dams in the San Fernando Valley, which is literally my backyard, provide vital risk management of portions of the Los Angeles River. And I look forward to continuing to work with you on these projects, particularly as there's this re-envisioning and recreation of what the Los Angeles River should be capable of while it continues its flood control purposes. While I enjoyed our discussion yesterday by phone, I was also pleased to hear that climate resiliency is a top priority for you. And with California facing an unprecedented drought and heat wave combined, literally as we speak, the increased resiliency of our water infrastructure will be a top priority of mine. Look forward to having someone that has the familiarity and experience with California in the Assistant Secretary's office. I know there's other issues that I wanted to raise that have been asked already, so I'll just add one specific topic. As you know, and as we discussed yesterday, the Scripps Institute of Oceanography has been working for years together with the Corps, with the state of California, with the Coalition of Water Districts, particularly in Southern California, as well as researchers, to better integrate storm monitoring into how the Army Corps regulates water releases from dams throughout the state. It simply makes no sense that rigid water control manuals require dam operators to release water during a drought simply because a decades-old water control manual says so. There is now wide support amongst the California delegation for the Corps to take into account modern hydrology and precipitation forecasts into its dam operations, especially as we face increased variability in rainfall. We've already started seeing the benefits of this, both at Lake Mendocino in Northern California, as well as the Prado Dam in Southern California. So with the time remaining, just to ask if you can speak to the importance of the Forecast Informed Reservoir Operations Program and the need to update our water control manuals in the face of increasing variability in precipitation and the cycle of drought and flooding that we are facing in California.
Senator, thank you for that question. I very much enjoyed the discussion yesterday. I absolutely agree that looking at resiliency, looking at a changing environment, that improved forecasting, monitoring, operations is absolutely critical. We've been operating under rules that were developed in a time where the environment no longer reflects the assumptions that were made in putting together those rules. This was a discussion that we had with the Corps when I was at the Bureau of Reclamation and the Department of the Interior. It's obviously continuing. I think this is a great place to get the most bang for the buck, making the investments in those technologies, forecasting and monitoring, so that we can integrate those into operations, improve water supply or protection of communities if we can better forecast those extreme events, and make progress while we're looking for the whole array of solutions that have to be in place. Some of those are infrastructures, a lot of them are natural infrastructure, but we can't forget technology and our ability to manage water using information.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Padilla, thanks so much for joining us. Senator Markey, good to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Connor, for your willingness to serve. So we have a big issue up in Massachusetts on Cape Cod. The Bourne and Sagamore bridges were built in the 1930s as part of a Franklin Delano Roosevelt Works Progress Administration plan. And they've aged out. and we need to replace these two bridges. And it's very important because 250,000 people who live on Cape Cod are dependent upon those bridges. And during the summer, that number can double, triple, or quadruple the number of people who use those bridges. And the Army Corps of Engineers operate these bridges. They're the ones who are responsible for them. So we need to replace them, and they are absolutely critical to the long-term well-being of our Commonwealth. The Army Corps specifically signed a memorandum of understanding with the Massachusetts Department of Transportation back in July of 2020, formalizing a federal-state partnership to deliver 2 new bridges for the people of Cape Cod. Implementing this agreement will fall now to the Biden administration and to the Army Corps. And every year which we delay is going to lead to more traffic, more costs, more danger when inevitable storms strike the region. So, Mr. Connor, are you willing to work with us, the Army Corps, in order to make sure that we are able to replace the Bourne and the Sagamore and to create for the 21st century a guaranteed capacity for people to get access on and off of Cape Cod?
Senator Markey, I'm not previously familiar with this project, but given its importance as you've outlined, I am happy to work with you in moving forward and seeing what we can do to ensure that that project is taken care of.
Right. Well, thank you. And again, it's something that requires the chairman and the other members of Congress here to provide additional federal funding, and we're working hard on that in order to make sure that for that project and for so many other projects in the country that we have a capacity to work on it. And just following up on what Senator Copper and Senator Whitehouse talked to you about coastal protections, Delaware, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, but all of us are seeing rising tides. We're seeing massive erosion. We're seeing intensification of the storms, which are impacting us. In New England, we have the second fastest warming body of water on the planet. After the Arctic, we're second in the Gulf of Maine. And that's Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island. And so that warming is causing tremendous danger being created. So we want to work with you in order to make sure that we deal with these issues. For example, under a business as usual scenario, over the course of this century, for the city of Boston, the sea rise could go as high as 7 additional feet if we don't take action. So from our perspective, we need help. And in light of those concerns, could you explain how, again, following up on Senator Copper and Senator Whitehouse, how you're going to enhance comprehensively and expand the capacity of the Army Corps to combat these threats to coastal communities in the United States?
Thank you, Senator. Overall, my approach in thinking through how, if confirmed, I would want to approach the huge number of needs versus the resources. One, I discussed this earlier a little bit. Given that backlog of need out there, I'm certainly hopeful and appreciative of the fact that Congress, in working with the president, are looking at the infrastructure investments that can be made. But assessing the risks out there, the vulnerabilities that exist are going to be a high priority in assessing how to prioritize the resources we do have. And so understanding the risk associated with the body of water that you talked about, the energy involved in a warming body of water, and the storm surges that's going to cause, that's going to be a very high priority, because I think that's fundamental to being effective in allocating resources and addressing resiliency, is to best understand the risks involved. And so I'm very happy to delve more deeply into the issues that you're talking about as others in assessing the coastal risk versus inland risk, et cetera, and trying to make the good judgments about where to invest resources.
Yeah, one of the concerns, obviously, that we have, and I've been working with the Army Corps on developing a comprehensive study for addressing Boston's climate resiliency. We are right in the crosshairs of this climate crisis. It's coming right for us. And again, we're going to need to work with the Army Corps so that we put in place the protections which we need. The same thing is true, by the way, for Newburyport. Newburyport, Plum Island, it's just so vulnerable right now. The numbers are scary. 20% of Newburyport falls within FEMA's 100-year flood zone, with the risk exacerbated even further for the oceanfront residents. And so that's why I've been pushing the Army Corps to urgently address worsening shoreline erosion in that vulnerable community as well. And I want to work with you on the Newburyport issue because, again, it's not their fault that the ocean is warming right off of their coastline. Any one of these storms could have absolutely catastrophic consequences. If Hurricane Sandy had just moved a few more degrees, we'd still be digging out on Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket in the city of Boston. Newburyport, we'd still be recovering from it. It would be catastrophic. So we want to make sure that we undertake additionally critical work to shore up the seawalls that can prevent these surging tides. And this committee also has a concomitant responsibility to ensure that we're funding the solutions to this climate crisis. And under the leadership of the chairman, we are going to be doing that this year. But we're going to need to partner with you at the Army Corps. We're totally dependent upon you in the state of Massachusetts.
Absolutely, Senator. I look forward to working with you on these issues if I'm confirmed.
Thank you so much. And we're looking forward to working with you as well. Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for giving me that
You know, you bet. I should thank you, and I do. All right. I'm not sure if we'll have any of our other colleagues to join us. Senator Capito has gone off to the Appropriations Committee, I believe, and Senator Sullivan's trying to get here. We'll see if he makes it. In the meantime, I have about 14 more questions. No, not really. Got several more, though. Several more. Hope you're doing. Are you doing all right?
I'm doing all right, Senator. My time is your time, Senator.
Good. Want to give great credit to your wife and daughter for sticking here and supporting you through this grueling examination. So this is a friendly. I don't know if you can tell. This is a friendly hearing. We have some that aren't quite as friendly, but this is an encouraging thing. But a couple more questions, if I may. Maybe one of them dealing with relationship with OMB. Very often on this committee, we hear from multiple sources, as you might imagine, about the sometimes tense relationship between the Corps and the Office of Management and Budget. There's a lack of transparency about how the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works and Corps recommendations for a proposed budget are considered by OMB. And many times, senators, and you heard a little of this today, and many times senators feel that these recommendations are ignored or even overridden by OMB. This is what happens time and time again on equity between coastal and inland funding. My question is this: how might you, as Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works, improve the relationship with OMB and bring a bit more transparency to the budget process?
Thank you, Senator. I think it's a huge, it's an important question and it's a huge issue. And I say that because it's one I'm very experienced in during my tenure at both running the Bureau of Reclamation and the Department of the Interior as its CEO, working with OMB and trying to have my priorities be its priorities. Involved a lot of patient dialogue. Wasn't always successful, but I will say that through that process of engagement and not challenging, but wanting to go back and have discussions when decisions were made that were not reflecting the priorities that I thought should be in place, I found was very productive with folks at OMB. Having the staff that would work for me, engage the staff at OMB, and then taking it up and having the discussions at the leadership level when things were teed up. It's a process that sometimes you can make immediate progress on certain issues, I'm happy to say that some of the things that we worked on in 2014, 2015, 2016 didn't see the light of day until this most recent budget. But clearly they got internalized at some point, some of the Indian water rights initiatives at Interior, et cetera. So we can make progress in the short term through engagement, and we can maintain progress and hopefully build on that in future. And that's what we need to do. And if I'm confirmed, you have my commitment to engage in that process. I think it's just critical for the Army Corps of Engineers. It's critical for members of Congress to understand how decisions are being made. And I think at the end of the day, it leads to better decisions with the allocation of budget resources.
I think you're right. Second question, stakeholders and sponsor collaboration with the Army Corps of Engineers is a critical component in solving today's water resources challenges. It helps to limit the cost of missed opportunities. It promotes better planning. It provides better transparency and results in more fiscally and environmentally sound projects. The Corps, unfortunately, has been limited in its outreach methods to promote stakeholder development in a number of disadvantaged communities. And my question is, what more could or should the Corps be doing in terms of collaboration with non-federal stakeholders, including those in disadvantaged communities?
Senator, it's a huge challenge from Corps, not because I think there's not a commitment there, but just given the oversubscribed nature of the projects and the works that are already in place. And quite frankly, I've had these discussions with General Spellman at a very high level at this point in time about the challenges to the workforce itself in doing the work that's it's expected to do. And so, notwithstanding all of those demands, I see, and I think the Corps in my discussion so far certainly sees the direction that's being given by Congress to do the outreach to disadvantaged communities, to look at cost benefit differently, to carry out pilot projects that will allow them to engage in those projects and bring the talents and the expertise and the protections and the value of the projects that the Corps can work on with those communities. They see it, I see it, and it will be a high priority in this next administration. And my sense is that there will be resources allocated specifically in this area. And with that, there's no excuse for not moving forward in trying to engage with these communities.
All right, thank you. We talked a bit in a conversation earlier this week about natural infrastructure, using natural infrastructure where it can, nature-based infrastructure as opposed to man-made infrastructure as an integral part of the Corps' project delivery process. Congress has been very clear about moving these concepts forward, but the incorporation of these features into Water Resources Project is still the exception rather than the rule. How might you, as Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works, ensure that Corps planning and engineering standards are updated to incorporate these principles into the normal project delivery process?
Thank you, Senator. I think what I can do from my position, if I'm confirmed, is to prioritize the need to integrate nature-based solutions, natural infrastructure, wherever we can and wherever it makes sense. And there's a direction that needs to be in place to always look at that option. And two, to ensure that we understand all the options available. And once again, this is a discussions that I've had in preparation for these hearings, is the need for more research and development in this area. We know in some cases where we can move forward. The beneficial use of dredge material, I think, is one of those opportunities. The integration in coastal protections of natural materials as well as traditional concrete and brick and mortar type infrastructure, I think, has been used. But clearly, from a cost efficiency standpoint and an opportunity standpoint, we need to do more of that. In looking at flood risk management and looking at trying to slow down water in various ways, how do we build more backwaters? How do we build more access to floodplains? Not only to get the benefits of the protections, but to infiltrate, groundwater, depleted groundwater aquifers that are necessary for water supply, that are necessary for their cooling effects later on in the year, in the summer when water flows dip. There are just so many opportunities to integrate these natural solutions and get multiple benefits that it will be a high priority to ensure we're always looking at it, and a high priority to better understand through research and development and pilot projects how we can move forward with those type of that integration.
All right, thanks. Thank you for your response. That's an important issue to us and the first state and to a lot of our other states as well, as you know. Probably my last question of this morning will deal with the core budget, and subject that others have raised already. You've commented on it too. And once I've asked a question, you've answered it. If no one else joins us, Senator Sullivan's trying to. We'll see if he can make it. But if he doesn't, then I'll ask you if there's anything you want to say. There he is. Good. All right, Colonel, welcome aboard. I'm gonna you back. If you're ready, I can Danny, I can just yield to you now. I've been joined by
I'm ready.
Senator Sullivan from the great state of Alaska.
Mr. Connor, thank
Retired
you.
Marine Colonel.
Thanks for waiting. Sorry about my late arrival here, but we had an opportunity to ask some questions yesterday in front of the Armed Services Committee, so you get 2 rounds.
So what we call a double shot of
Congratulations.
baby's love, with apologies to Junior Walker and the All-Stars.
I appreciate it.
Let me again, I appreciated our discussion the other day. Let me go into this one topic that I think is actually a very important one. The budget that the president put forward for the Corps of Engineers effectively prohibits funding for Army Corps projects that, quote, facilitate the transportation of fossil fuel products. Now, you and I kind of did a quick little back of the envelope estimate. That's probably at least 50% of all Corps of Engineer projects. Let me give one example. I know that in the Boston area, they import a lot of LNG from Russia. Very bad policy, by the way, the state of Massachusetts. They'd rather import gas from Russia, our adversary, than Americans who produce gas in Pennsylvania. As far as I can tell, this reading wouldn't allow you to dredge Boston Harbor or do any work there. Do you agree with this? And what do you think the implications are of a policy that prohibits the Corps from any project that transports fossil fuels?
Senator Sullivan, I appreciate the discussion, the heads up on this particular matter when we talked the other night. I don't believe that's a policy. I did go and find the language that I think you're referring to. I'm not 100% sure, but my understanding was that in the budget there was language talking about considerations made in the development of the budget, of which one of those was to limit the subsidies that the Corps would provide for oil and gas, facilitating oil and gas operations. So first of all, I understand it was a discussion about the consideration. It was essentially directed towards subsidies, and moreover, it was it's a policy document in which there was this language trying to explain how the overall budget was developed. And so from that standpoint, I don't believe that is the policy, that it has the breadth of issues that you and I were discussing the other night. But second of all, I can just assure you that in making decisions about how to allocate resources, I'm going to be focused on the applicable statutes, laws that apply, the appropriations provided by Congress, and the direction on how to use those appropriations. And that's going to, as I see it, and I did go through the budget after we talked, it's directing that a lot of these activities related to commerce and ports and waterways and transportation needs are going to continue in full force.
So let me just read some of the language. It says, no funding for work that directly subsidizes fossil fuels, including work that lowers the cost of production, lowers the cost of consumption, or raises revenues retained by producers of fossil fuels. So do you agree with that?
Well, that's a little bit different language than I've seen.
I'm reading the budget.
Right. No, I understand that I need to go back and look at that specific language.
Again, I'm a huge believer in what the Corps does. Their mission is to build things. A lot of what they do is transportation. A lot of what they do is pipelines. A lot of what they do. We still need energy in America. There's a far left element of the Biden administration that thinks we can get rid of fossil fuels. We can't. Okay, we can't. You'll crush the economy. By the way, there's a lot of discussion of union jobs in here. You'll kill millions of union jobs. The president's already pretty good at that. So I just need your commitment that this kind of policy makes no sense. And it's a huge, huge component of the work that the Corps of Engineers does. Right now, the president's budget is telling and directing you, you can't do a lot of the work that you traditionally do. And I just think it's a really big issue, Mr. Chairman, that we need to look at in detail. A number of us are going to be writing the head of OMB in the next day or two to ask direct questions about this topic. But can I get your commitment to work with me and others in this committee who care about the delivery of energy and the men and women who produce it, many of whom are union members, and not discriminate, particularly with regard to the Corps' mission, on projects that help us deliver energy to Americans, particularly when gasoline prices right now are skyrocketing, hurting working families. This is all going to contribute to that. And I'd like your commitment to work with me and this committee on this topic. It's a really, really important topic. I don't think it's a partisan topic. I don't think EPW members want to have a policy that says you cannot help with the transportation or consumption of energy. We need energy in America. I know some of the far left Green New Dealers don't think we do, but we do. Can I get your commitment on that?
You have my commitment to work with you, this committee as a whole, to carry out the Corps' mission, to continue to do those projects and maintain waterways and to continue to rehabilitate.
How about pipelines?
In pipelines, we will move forward with our permitting responsibilities consistent with the Clean Water Act, be transparent and do the full analysis. And I'm happy to continue to work with you in those areas and to continue that work in the way it's directed under the existing laws.
Great. Mr. Chairman, may I ask one final question?
Yes. I'd ask you to be brief. I think we're about to start voting, and I want to ask one more question myself.
I just want to, we had a really good discussion the other day, and again, I appreciated all the time that you had in my office as it relates to permitting. And again, I think that this is pretty much a bipartisan issue. We had some good language on permitting reform here in this committee when we marked up the highway bill. The Corps has a kind of can-do, mission-oriented focus on building things. But when it takes 9 years to permit a bridge, or 9 to 19 years to permit and build a highway in America, those are averages, it really, really undermines our ability to put people to work and build the infrastructure we need as a country. Can I get your commitment to work with this committee? You and I had a good discussion about this on permitting reform, not to cut corners, but to get to projects in an efficient, timely manner. And as you know, and Mr. Chairman, we've talked about in this committee, if we have efficient, timely permitting, we're also going to be able to get millions, billions of dollars off the sidelines and from the private sector that will invest in these kind of infrastructure projects. But they won't invest if it's a 10-year permitting timeline. Can I get your commitment to work with us, this committee and me, on those important issues?
Senator, yes, absolutely. This will be a high priority to do our part, if I'm confirmed, to make our permitting system more efficient. And that means collaborating, coordinating with other agencies that are involved, and getting even to another place that you and I talked about, mitigation banking and other opportunities. When you bring those in and you create more opportunities to deal with the impacts of projects, I think that also helps to address creates at least the opportunity to do permitting more efficiency and move it forward. So I'm a big fan of the federal government working with others to be more efficient in this process. That's a long-winded answer to your question. Yes, you have my commitment.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for joining us. You're worth waiting for. Mr. Connor, one last question, if I could. Have you ever heard of a comic strip, Pogo?
Yes, sir, I've had.
The I think one of the scripts was Pogo would say, "We have met the enemy, and it is us." Met the enemy, and it is us. When I hear my colleagues and I ask questions about the level of funding for the Army Corps to do its many different works across the country, I'm reminded of Pogo. And but as you know, the Congress typically funds the Army Corps of Engineers at levels actually above the president's request. I think in fiscal 21 request, the last administration, their request was something just under $6 billion, a lot of money. Congress ended up providing, it was not nearly enough, and Congress ended up providing close to $8 billion for that, for the current fiscal year. And while those numbers appear to be large, they are large. The Corps has not made a significant dent in the project backlog, estimated to be nearly $109 billion. And some observers have said the Corps needs an even larger investment of up to $140 billion when the full scope of project needs are considered. Will you, if confirmed, will you advocate and just work with us, work with this committee to see if we can't convince this new administration to help us increase the Corps' budget to support Corps missions and local needs? As you know, as the budget process, President's request and the Congress's debate and appropriate monies, it would be helpful to have an administration which actually is aware of this need, and to make sure that when they prepare and offer their budgets in the future, it's reflective of those needs. Would you made a lot of commitments today, but I'm asking if you would commit to advocate and work with us to increase the Army Corps' budget to support the needs, many needs and missions that the Corps is expected to meet. Would you?
Mr. Chairman, if I'm confirmed, you have my full commitment to elevate these issues, discuss them rigorously within the administration, and to work with you and the committee members in that effort. I'm happy to do that.
All right, thank you. I indicated a bit earlier that I give you a little bit of time here at the end. If anything else you'd like to say, just in summarizing.
No, sir, I think I've said enough today.
My thanks to you for your willingness. Let me see if I have. Hold on just one second, please. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for your willingness to serve our nation. We're proud of our committees. And our thanks again to your family, to your wife, and to your daughter for you serve too. It's not just your husband, not just your dad. But we are proud on this committee of our really a record of bipartisanship. I'd like to say that we're workhorses here in this committee, not show horses. I'm delighted that record has been demonstrated by our consideration of the president's nominees for this Congress. Today's hearing continues that effort, and we look forward to hearing more from you in the days and the weeks ahead. And since Senator Capito's has had to leave, she sends her best and joins me in thanking you for coming today and for all your responses. Before we adjourn, a little bit of housekeeping. I want to ask unanimous consent to submit for the record a variety of materials that include letters from stakeholders, other materials that relate to today's nomination hearing. Senators will be allowed to submit questions for the record through the close of business on Friday, July 16th. That's this Friday. We'll compile those questions and send them to our witnesses, ask that you reply to them by next Wednesday, July 21st. And with that, this hearing is mercifully adjourned. Thank you.